o'clock, and we're going to get started. And just to let you know, we are doing the beach bum bag, which is my pattern that released last week. Just to grab my pattern. Not that I need it to sew, but just to show you, this is what the pattern looks like. As you can see, it's Turtle Designs, which is me. And this is the pattern I released last week. It is a pretty good sized tote, just to show you. Um, Print I'm using today is this really cute sketchy Mario print from Fabric Therapy. And I have a couple of other prints I'm using that are Mario themed that came originally from Miss Mac Fabrics that's no longer in business. Just to show you what the bag looks like. So just so you can see, this is the beach bum bag. It's a pretty good size if you see my head. It's a pretty good size tote. Pattern comes with being able to put a snap in. Has a large two-pocketed slip pocket on the inside. An optional zipper pocket, which in this case, for a water themed one, we needed some pirate gold, but just very simple on the inside. However, on the inside, thank you. This fabric is from Geek Garden Fabrics. I actually have this fabric as well in cotton lycra. It's one of my favorites. So we have that, and thank you very much. Welcome to my live for tonight. Another one I've made. It's actually the same print. This is a clear vinyl. And I will do a tutorial of how to adapt this pattern for clear vinyl versus the woven or canvas or vinyl bag. So we have, this one has a, hi Annette, and I'm going to pronounce your name wrong if I say Tyree, but so this is a clear vinyl bag, as you can see from the inside, completely has no lining, and it has a canvas pack, pocket, not pack. And you see, I actually lined it with the same material I lined the other bag with. A couple others. This is waterproof canvas, inside and out. And just to show you the front, has a matching Haunted Mansion along with all the iconic things from Haunted Mansion. Then we have the one that I made and this pattern can be made with vinyl, woven, waterproof canvas. On the inside, I actually suggest that you do waterproof canvas high chase, mainly because if you're using it, especially for a beach bag, it's good to have something that's going to be resistant to the water. So this is a vinyl exterior, completely vinyl. Actually, I need to take a picture of this. It is actually a glow vinyl, so it glows in the dark. I haven't taken a picture of that yet, and this is a very thin vinyl for the bottom, which is called Linen Oxford from Soulful Therapy. And this one, instead of the cam snap, has a magnetic snap. So these are all things you can change in the bag. And yet again, we have a slip pocket. And this is waterproof canvas. It's a silky waterproof canvas. And we have our zipper pocket. Now this one has a little more fancy on the inside. We have Beetlejuice on the inside, but that is a woven on the inside. Now, I have made it with waterproof canvas, wax canvas, and vinyl, and clear vinyl. And tonight I'm going to walk you through at least the first half of the bag with woven and tell you how some of the things I do different. One thing with woven, and I apologize for that, I apparently got a fingerprint on my glasses. So I apologize. Okay. Now, just to show you, this is my material I'm using. Normally, when I do woven for bags, I will put some SF 101 on the back of my fabric to prevent the stretch. However, this one, because it is woven, I do have waterproof canvas for the lining. I just have a plain black waterproof canvas for the lining because I'm using an accent fabric for the slip pocket on the inside, so it'll really pop. This is woven, so to add some more structure and thickness to the um, and I have added fleece too. If you're not adding fleece, you will need to add the SF 101 just to give your woven fabric a little more body, more structure to it, and also so it doesn't stretch. Um, like I said, I just have a plain black for the inside. This is my accent slip pocket. My front pocket that's going to be on the front is all they are also woven. So I'm doing this almost completely woven except for the vinyl on the bottom. And for this one, wherever did I put it? Okay, I have that. Like I said, I love this linen Oxford vinyl. So this is, you can see on the back, it's kind of a shiny. It's a very thin vinyl, but it gives you that durability of vinyl without being super thick, especially for domestic machines. And these are my bottoms of my exterior. And this is going to be, and this is not sewn on yet. I will explain where to put this, but this is my exterior front pocket. This is where I say it's one of the best places to put your tag. Right now, it's what's holding it on there is double stick tape, which is one of my go-tos for most of this stuff. I use double stick tape to stick my pockets, stick webbing down, and all that. And this is my lining for that exterior pocket. I could use wall canvas. Actually, originally cut the waterproof canvas and decided I wanted to have so my pocket on the exterior will look like this. And when I look down in the pocket, I'll see some more invincibility stars. As you can tell, I'm a big Mario person. All right, so to get started for today, we're not going to try to do the whole bag today, even though we probably could. I'm not going to rush it. It's been a long day. I had doctor's appointments for my younger daughter most of the day. So I didn't get back home until about 5 o'clock this afternoon. I did have all this ready and ahead of time, so we'll get started. So what we're going to do is try to get our exterior put together today. And then next week we will put the lining together and put the rest of the bag together. So, all right. I just figured I would show you all the pieces. All right. So the first thing you need to do if we are doing the exterior, if you were to buy the pattern, I actually have you doing all your prep, which is putting all your interfacings in, all that you need. And I actually have you prep some of the pieces for your lining. But since we're skipping and doing the exterior first, we're going to skip that prepping, like for the zipper pocket and all that, until next week. So, our first thing is that we have our front pocket panel piece. This is our exterior piece. Hi, Susan. And from the top, this is centered. I don't have it marked on here because all I did to find my center, fold it in half. You need to go down a 1.5 inches. My seam allowance for this bag is 1/2 inch. So that's why I will, there's my 1/2 inch for the seam allowance and then 1 inch down. Thank you. Um, Down from where the seam will be. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I don't, when I get, you can actually completely sew both of these together, then open it, then sew it, measure down 1 inch and sew it. But this way, or you can completely sew it together. And I have done this too when I forget to add it. You can take it and sew it together, then completely baste them together on the other side, top stitch around the top, and then add your tag. But then your stitching for your tag is going to show in your lining. So what I find is best is to put your tag centered 1.5 inches down from the top. So I'm going to move you to the machine and we'll get started. But like I said, you can find my pattern at sewingturtleboutique.net. And there's where the beach bum bag, as well as any of my Cool Cube, any of my other patterns, and I do have tutorials for a lot of that. my next tutorial after this one completed will be the clear version of this bag. And then I hope to run one more time through a Gamer's Night Out wallet, which is a wallet that will carry either a full size Switch or a Switch Lite. And I do plan on making an add on for the Switch 2 in the next couple months. I have one, I just have not had the time to sit down and figure out my measurements and everything and my adjustments. So I will do that in the next couple months, and hopefully maybe by Christmas release a Switch carrying case as well. That's my plan because I want one for myself. So, all right, so we're gonna move y'all to the sewing machine. So, whenever I have this is a cork tag. So if you can see, this is a cork tag. So I sew all the way around, and this is actually my logo for my sewing turtle. And apparently, my doggy has been underneath my sewing machine again because my pedal has been moved. Any questions y'all have so far? Now, when I sew this on with actually because I want it as close to the edge as I possibly can. I sew this at about a 16th of an inch all the way around, and that holds it down really well. And if anybody asks, I usually sew most of my sewing at a 2.5 stitch length. However, sometimes, like if I'm sewing on vinyl, I'll increase that to 3 or 3.5. A lot of it's dependent on your materials. And with woven, I just pretty much sew at 2.5 no matter what. And in case anybody's wondering, I am using a variegated unicorn mane thread. So you can see it changes from colors to colors because I actually do like the coordinating threads. So our first thing that we're going to do, you can hold it, you can pin it. Most of the time, if it's not a fabric that's going to stretch a lot on me, especially since this has had SF101 attached to both layers, I am just going to hold it together, put my pieces together, and sew it together at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And what I will do is you could pin it and you wouldn't have to readjust, but I like to hold it a lot of times. If it's not something I'm worried about being fiddly or anything like that, and this is being more fiddly than I wanted it to be, that's personally me. So we have sewn, and here's where you really can see that I'm sewing with a variegated thread. Okay, so we have our trim my threads. Now, one thing I'm going to do is that since I have the tag, and that's the main reason I don't do this, we're going to press this open. So I'm going to take it over to my iron. But since I'm sitting here at the machine, normally I would take it over to my iron. Now, if you have like a leather or cork tag at this point, make sure you don't hit it with your iron. I've been using the Juki TL18 for about 5 years now. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. Ah, So as you saw, I was doing what I call a finger press. I had my seam open, and I will actually do that. So now what I'll do, even though I didn't use pins in the last step, because I want my nice flat seam, I will actually pin it together. I will say this, I have put this machine through a lot of stuff. Uh, like I said, I've been sewing on this since about March of 2020, before COVID hit. I went and had a good, really big show, and it's like after killing two domestic machines because of the things I like to sew, um, I went semi-industrial and I haven't looked back since. So I'll explain what I'm doing, why I'm pinning all the way around in just a second, because it'll make more sense when I have it all pinned. And I'm going to readjust you a little bit. So there you go. That's a little better. When I moved the camera, it kind of did something screwy for placement. So, all right. So the next step for this, and as you can see, there's the exterior of my pocket. There's the interior. So sometimes I like to just have that nice pop of color. So what we're going to do is we're going to top this using an eighth of an inch seam allowance all the way across, and that's your top stitch that you're going to see. Then we are going to go. I don't take my needle out. I will actually pivot right here, and I will use an eighth of an inch seam allowance to baste these two layers together, so it becomes one piece and makes it a lot easier to handle. You don't have two pieces that are moving around constantly while you're putting it on your bag. So we have, like I said, I do the top stitch first. And if anybody's wondering how I know an eighth of an inch, this is what's called a narrow foot for the Juki, and it is an eighth of an inch wide. So I use that the side of my foot as my eighth of an inch seam allowance. So we are just going to sew that around. No, the only problem I ever had with the Juki is that my foot pedal, this has a thread cutter, and the foot pedal that comes with it has the um, pedal and the thread cutter in one foot pedal. And last year, the cutter kept randomly cutting, and I found out that was a common flaw with the Juki TL18. However, so brother actually released a two pedal foot pedal for this machine about 2.5 years ago because of this issue. And one foot does the sewing, one pedal does the sewing, and one pedal does the cutting. So I invested in that and haven't looked back since, and no issues. All I did in the meantime was disable the cutting feature on my pedal, which meant taking in and doing a little bit of surgery. And I still have a backup pedal if need be. It just doesn't cut. It doesn't have the automatic cut, which is one of the nice things about this machine. So if you ever hear it just make a click sound, it means I'm meshing my foot pedal down to do that. Okay. We trim our threads, and we've got some nice, lovely tails of fraying fabric. It's not a worry because this will be buried under your webbing. Okay. So we have our front pocket, front and back, and you see, since they're basted together, it is one piece. This is our front, which makes it very easily to identify because I have my tag, but you can't see that I sewed my tag down because I did that at the first step. Okay, so what I'm gonna go do, I'm gonna grab my 1/4 inch double stick tape. I have lots of different widths of double stick tape. I have 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, eighth of an inch, and depending on what you're needing it for, it's all good. Well, it actually did come with the piece that would stop it from cutting, but because it was a malfunction in the pedal itself, it would still randomly cut even when I had that stuck in there. So, just to show you the difference, I can lift up my pedal and show you. So this is the different pedal. And it's still Juki brand. And I got this one through Juki Junkies. But and actually, if you buy this in Japan where the machine is made, they come with this one, not the other one. But the US ones come with where it's all in one pedal. But this one does the sewing, and then that one does my cutting. So it's a little different. Yeah, it's a little getting used to, but once you're used to it, it goes pretty fast. My teenager sewed on my machine for the first time last week when she sewed one of these bags, and she's like, "This is kind of nice. I don't have to go cut my thread and stop and think about it." And one other thing that's good about the Juki is that it automatically, when it stops down with the needle in the um, down in the machine. So pivoting and stuff like that is very easy. All right, so we have 1/4 inch. This is 1/4 inch double stick tape. I'm going to use 1/2 inch on my webbing in just a minute. But what I do for this, and what we're in, the reason we're doing this, you can pin it in place, especially if you're using woven like I am. But in a lot of ways, this is easier. And I say that because experience. Um, I don't have to fiddle with it. And what happens if my pins get off? Once this is stuck, it's stuck until I'm done sewing it. Because I'm not going to sew this down until after I get my webbing on. So I just want this to hold it in place until that webbing is sewn down. So if it's there, like I said, if you put it at the edge of your pockets, and I'll show you once I get the other side on all the way. And you're very welcome, Annette. I said, I love my Juki machine. I've been using it for about, like I said, about 4 years now. And if it decided to die on me, I probably would go back and buy another one. I know it is a little more expensive than a lot of the sewing machines out there, but to me, it's been worth the price. It's kind of like I just upgraded my last year to a Brother 650 embroidery machine from my Baby Lock that was still a 6 needle, but it was 20 years old. So definitely see a difference when you upgrade. So right now, this is the back. You have your double-sided tape. And what we're going to do is we are going to mark our center. Actually, I want to mark on the front side because that is not going to be seen. As long as you mark it in the seam allowance, you're fine. We're going to mark our center. And I have those of y'all who've been with me before, I have a Sharpie here that I use for that purpose. Sometimes I use red, sometimes I use blacks, just depending on what I have at the moment. And I'm going to do the same thing I have my exterior piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half and mark my center yet again. And yes, you could take it and go over to your cutting table and say, okay, this is exactly halfway through. This is exactly halfway through, and then do it that way. However, I find this is just easier, and I'll show you why. So I'm not sewing at the moment, but just to show you, so y'all can see me, because if I take this over to my table, you're not going to see me. All right, so now I'm going to take off my backing for my double-sided tape, which sometimes it wants to come off and sometimes it doesn't. Give me just a second. Of course, I have people watching, so now it wants to be difficult. I was doing something a little bit earlier and it was coming off like nobody's business. So, like I said, here we go. There's one side off, and we're going to pull off the other side. Now, see, that one came off easy. So, like I said, it's never predictable. All right, so what I'm going to do I have my center marks on both of these. And yes, I know I have double-sided tape, but I'm not sticking anything down, so it really doesn't catch until I start sticking it up. So what I do is I take my two center marks and I line them and lay them on top of each other. So I will put the center marks over each other, and then I will press up the one side and stick it in place. And I'll stick up the other side and stick that one in place. And just to show you what it looks like, since it's a little more of a narrow place, this is double stick tape. As you see, it's holding on there. But if I would need to like rearrange it, I can pull it off. This is not a permanent fix. This is just where it's not going to take it and all that. It's not going to come off. Now, what you can do, if you felt better, you could actually, instead of using double stick tape, you could use pins and then baste it down. That's totally okay. But like I said, I live and die in my bag making with double stick tape. And like I said, I have eighth of an inch, quarter inch, half inch. I use all different kinds for different things. Like I will show you next week when we do a zipper pocket how I use eighth of an inch for the zipper tape to keep it in place. So we have this. So the next thing, I'm going to go ahead and show you what it will look like because I've already put the webbing on the back of the bag. This is the front of the bag. You could put pockets on the front and back. However, I'm only doing the one because I like having one side that is completely the main print. So just to show you an example. So we have this one. I have the pocket, and if you look, sometimes you can fussy cut. So as you can see, I did fussy cut. But on the back, you see the print, but there is no pocket back here. So just to show you, so and also to save time, I'm gonna go over to my table, or I might just bring my ruler over here and show y'all how I put it on there. So we have, this is the back, and this is the webbing, and as you see, not falling off. Doesn't matter. This is cotton webbing. You can use cotton webbing. You can use seatbelt webbing. I've used both. Um, you can, but it needs to be at least 1.5 inches wide. And so if you see, when it's stuck, this is stuck on with 1/2 inch wide double stick tape. And as you can see, I don't have it going all the way up because the back, you are not going to sew all the way up. So, but I went ahead and stuck the webbing on the back just so I could show you at this point. But what we're going to do is we're going to put the webbing over top of the pocket, and I will turn the video so you can see what I'm doing. I just got to grab my ruler. So, but all these, my pattern is a cut list. So you will have a list of the different sizes that you need to cut for each pattern piece. What I'm doing right now is the two main exterior pieces. I also have the bottom of the exterior, which we'll get to in just a minute, the webbing, the exterior pocket. And that's probably all we're going to do today. But I will switch you back over to the machine just to show you how I put the webbing on, and then we'll attach the webbing and get our bottoms put on. Okay. All right. So we have our webbing. And just to show you, we are measuring 6 inches from the side. And I use my handy dandy ruler. Actually going to take this out of the sewing machine bed slightly. Okay. And what I'm going to do, got to grab my other webbing. Of course, it's on the table. And I'm dropping stuff, of course. All right, so we have our webbing. And as you can see on the back, I've got 1/2 inch double set. I've actually got two strips of it, 1/2 inch wide double stick tape. And I take it about 12 inches up, just not enough that I'm going actually to the top of my um, stitching, but to actually have enough that it's going to stick in place where I want it and it won't move. So I'm going to take my backing off. See, that comes off a lot easier. Sometimes it's annoying and sometimes it's not. See? And there's the thing. Talk about one being coming off really easy and clean, and the next one being a pain in the rear. All right. So I have one side of the webbing. I'm not taking, that is one thing. When you do the double stick tape, only take off one side at a time. Otherwise, it will be stuck to other things. Now, with the pocket, it's one thing, but the webbing, because you have such a big piece of webbing, it's more likely going to get stuck to something, and the stickiness is not going to stick, and you're going to have more issues. Okay, so I have this is a 6 by 12 ruler. So this is actually my favorite ruler for this. So I'll line up the bottom. Now, the thing is, if you are using cotton webbing, it will fray. So give it time after you've cut it to put fray check on it so that it won't fray in the bag. That's the biggest thing with cotton webbing versus seatbelt webbing, whereas you can take a lighter and kind of flame it off and you're good. So we have one side, so you can see we have one side on. It is stuck there, but the other side still has that. So I'm actually going to turn this around, and we're going to do 6 inches from the other side. I apologize right quick. Got to switch headphones. On again. But we have 6 inches from the other side. And what I will do is I will pull off double stick tape again. And like I said, when you want it to be easy, it comes off hard. When you want it, you say, oh, it might be hard. It comes off like nothing else. Okay, so we have the other side. Now, the biggest thing about putting your webbing on, and one of my testers realized this too late, make sure your webbing is not inside out. Like one of hers, when she did it, it was like this, and she twisted it. So when she realized it, when she finished sewing, that it was twisted. And that's a good time to double check before you sew it down. So one thing I always do after I get the webbing attached, or at least with the double-sided tape, is to double check. I have a random thread just sitting here. Double check that when I hold it up, my webbing is not twisted. So it doesn't have any weird twists to it or anything like that. All right, so we're going to, now this is what I do to start. We are going to sew across the bottom, and I always make sure to back stitch. Okay. And we start 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the webbing and material. And we are going to sew around this. And we are going to do this for all 4 webbing pieces. And you're like, how, well, if you didn't have double stick tape all the way up, how far do I know? Well, we're going to get up here a little bit and then I will show you. Okay. And I have a little ruler. And one thing is we want to stop our stitching 2 inches from the top. So you see the top of my main fabric. I've got my little, this is a little 2.5 inch ruler. So almost perfect there. I will put that there and I will stitch up until that point. Okay, and then I will rotate it, leaving my needle in. If you don't have a machine that automatically leaves your needle in, make sure you put your needle back through. Otherwise, you're going to be like, oh. So I will take and I will go straight across. Now, one other thing you can do is when you have this on your table, adding the webbing, you can lay a ruler over it and take a removable marking pen and and draw a line. That's what I do a lot of the times as well. Just depends on how much I want to do for it ahead of time. Sometimes I remember to, and sometimes I don't. So either way works. So we're going to go all the way down. Now, because this is the pocket, if you notice I started on the left webbing, it doesn't really matter which one you start on, but I'll tell you a little trick of what I do here. So we had that pocket that we just kind of stuck there. I'm going to go across the bottom again and basically go all the way across the bottom with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and that seals the pocket to the main fabric. And then I can just start in on the next webbing. I said I lift my foot, turn my or pivot it to go up the webbing. Are there any questions so far? And so this is not necessarily a hard pattern. It does have some involved parts, but actually the lining pieces are a little more complicated, but not much. So I have my little handy dandy ruler again for the 2 inches. So I will sew until I get to that 2 inch mark. Okay, and I will sew across and go back down. But if you use like waterproof canvas for both the lining and exterior, then you don't have to have any things to interface with. And then this is a very fast pattern if that's the case. Always remember to backstitch at the end. So now our pocket is fully attached right here. So it's not going anywhere. And just so you can see, on the back, you have both webbings sewn on all the way. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and sew the webbing for the other side or the back side, just so we have that and we can move on to the next part of getting the exterior done. And I do so fast, at least till I get to the point of where I need to watch my little 2 inch mark. This is why a lot of times I will actually draw it off with chalk that will come off later, or a removable heat pin. If it's seatbelt webbing, I actually have a silver vinyl marking tool that comes off really easily off webbing, so I use that. But chalk is actually found as one of my favorite things to use for that purpose. Okay, so we're going to go across and down again. Like I said, I only have one pocket on here. You could easily do 2 pockets with no issue. It's just a personal preference on mine. That's why I have lots of pockets on the inside. So, what fandoms would y'all make one out? I have made so far. I have made a Beetlejuice, and I have made a Pokemon. This is Mario. I'm a big nerdy person as far as when it comes to fabric choices, if it's my own fabric choice. So we are going to do the other side just now. Went a little past on the webbing, but since it's at the bottom in the seam allowance, just back it up a little. Like I said, I sew an 1/8 inch from the edge of the webbing. I'd love to know what anybody else is sewing tonight. The last couple days, I've actually been sewing an everything 2.0 bag for an order for a lady. I'm about halfway done with that. Finished all the quilting and starting to get all the zipper pockets on right now for the removable pocket pages. Uh, Now, if you ask me where I got the webbing, I don't remember. Could have been Joann's, could have been Hobby Lobby, it could have just been something random for all I know. All I know is I had a little over 3 yards of it, so it was about perfect for this size. And I like the feel of I like the looks and the ease and the thinness of seatbelt webbing, but I like the feel. Hi, Norma, of cotton webbing. So we have our back done and sewn. Okay, so for the next part, I have my bottom vinyl pieces for the exterior. And as you see, you can do the 2-inch cutout. I do it when I cut these out. And each side has a 2-inch cutout, even though it's kind of hard to see right now because I have two pieces on top of each other. But just so you can see, I go ahead and cut it out while it's a little itty bitty piece of fabric. So what we're going to do is we are going to attach this to each of our exterior fabrics that we have just put webbing on. Okay. Like I said, you can clip this, you can. I don't find that this vinyl stretches, so I am just holding it in place. But like I said, that's a me person thing, but I actually will. And I have random thread that flies at me. Okay. Now, if anybody's wondering how big this is about 16 inches tall, about approximately 20 and a half inches wide, and 4 inches deep. So it's pretty good size bag. Now, if I'm not using clips, I am holding this in place and I don't go quite as fast as when I was adding the webbing. But then again, the webbing was being held in place by double stick tape. So there's a little bit of a difference. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim our threads. Now, I do suggest vinyl for the bottom of your bag, just mainly for durability and stuff. And Soful Therapy has, like I said, this is called Linen Oxford. It's not, you can buy it by the half yard. She has lots of colors available. And it adds a nice pop of color, but is a nice thin vinyl that is very domestic friendly. So what we're going to do, if you see, we have our seam and we are going to fold our seam down towards the vinyl and we are going to stop stitch on the vinyl there to hold that seam in place. Okay. And I am going to stitch that in place. And so I could finger press this all the way across the whole time beforehand. I just do it a couple inches at a time, mainly because it gets bulky. It's just going to kind of curl back up anyways. So I just go a little bit at a time and I pull it down and I sew it all the way across. Like I said, my seam is underneath the vinyl. And as you can see it right here, how it rolls towards the bottom anyways. This is my beach bum bag. Hold on, let's see. Of course, where did this in particular is my helps if I hold it right side up. This is my pattern I released last Thursday. This is the beach bum bag. It can be found. It's in the description, but it's also I have the web address listed. But it is sewingturtleboutique.net. Like I said, it's a pretty good size bag. It's not a very complicated bag, but it's one that I was like, I need something that'll carry a lot. Okay. So we are almost done with the first side. Okay. And I am going to show you. I do a variegated thread a lot of the times, especially when I want to show off my edge stitching. So we have that nice pretty, and just so you can see the back, our seam is top stitched down all the way across. So there is the back side of our bag. I'm going to do the other side to the front where we had our pocket that we added. Okay, and I'm going to just hold it in place. Like I said, you can pin, now with using vinyl at the bottom, I would not pin it because that is going to puncture your vinyl. But you can, and I will actually clip this right here just to get started. I won't clip all the way down, but clips are better for clipping vinyl, of course. And I'm sure every seamstress has plenty of these little clips everywhere in their house. Mine take over. So, okay, we are going to take that out. I just mainly did that so I could get started. Like I said, I kind of just hold it down and I adjust as I go down. So I can definitely hear when I go over that webbing how much thicker it is. Because, like I said, cotton webbing is a lot thicker. We're almost finished attaching this side. So there's not a lot left to finishing up the exterior. But like I said, everything, unless I comment differently, is sewn with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So as you can see, I have it all sewn. So yet again, trim that nice lovely thread. We are going to fold this down and we are going to top stitch it. Okay. Like I said, I press this down as I get to it because one, you can't take a final part over to your iron. You're gonna have to finger press it. You could, like I said, you can finger press it ahead of time, but you're gonna have to hold it down anyway. So I find it easier just to go a little bit at a time and hold. Hey, we're almost all the way down. So we have our front of our bag. This is just the exterior. Like I said, we'll do the lining next week. And we have the front of our bag done with our pocket. And I will show this. And I'll turn it just so you can show both pieces, and we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so just to show you both exterior pieces, we have the one with the pocket, as you can see. And we have our bottom. And then we have our back, which is the one without the pocket. So the next step, and now here is where I actually will use clips, just because things like to slide. We are going to sew our exterior together. This is going to come with several parts. We are only going to sew. So I'd have some people say, "Oh, so we can just sew the bottom and the side at the same time." No, not in this bag. If you want it to actually be able to sit really close together, sit very well, hold things better, you don't need tons of clips to do this. Just enough to hold everything in place. So like I said, not tons, just enough. And we're going to sew this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we will go on to the next part, which is before we sew on to the sides. Okay, so we're going to move this back over. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sew this 1/2 inch seam allowance. I said, I love this very thin linen Oxford vinyl because it is very durable, but it's very thin. It's not going to tear on me. And it's great for things you want to be kind of more weather resistant. It's probably the best way to put it. But I love using this for all kinds of stuff. Like I said, for those who just came in, you can find the pattern in the description of the video, but also on my website, sewingturtleboutique.net. It's the beach bum bag as well as all my other patterns, including the Cool Cube, the Dimer's Night Out, the Turtle Bento bag, all that. So we're going to trim our threads. Okay. So now that we have the bottom sewn, before we move on to the sides, we are going to open this up. And I am going to kind of finger press my seams open. So I will actually turn the bag upside down, especially with this vinyl. You can do it pretty easily. Just open it at the seams because we are going to top stitch. And so I actually use my fingernail. And that's how awesome this vinyl is. It kind of puts it a memory in it. It's not perfect. But this will kind of give it the preemptive stay down out of the way. Not completely, but enough that I can turn it over now. And with your seam open, you're going to sew at 1/8 of an inch from the seam and do a top stitch. And that will keep your seam open and flat. Where is my, there we go, scissors trim thread. Okay. And so even though I've kind of finger pressed it, I still kind of have to hold it down while I top stitch. And we're going to do this on both sides of the seam. Now, some people say, okay, go all the way to the end, reverse stitch, and then take it out and do the other side. So what I do, since I'm sewing at a 2.5 inch length, stitch length, if you didn't know, that's about 1/8 of an inch when it stitches. Okay, so I am going to leave my needle in and rotate the bag. And I do 2 stitches. So first one takes me right to the seam line, and then the second one is right 1/8 of an inch from the other side. And I leave my needle in. I fold this up out of the way. It's a good thing about woven, doesn't matter how it flops together, but that's why we put the fleece to make it a little more sturdy. You could also put foam if you wanted it to be thick. Just depending on how sturdy you wanted it to be. I will say the all vinyl bag I made is very sturdy. Does not bend, but a lot of the waterproof canvas are just the same. I have made one with cotton canvas. That is the koi fish one I showed at the beginning. And I said, you just follow your seam all the way down, and you will have a nice, pretty top stitch as well as seams that lay very flat. Now, we don't do this for the lining, we only do this for the exterior, mainly because we have to have our lining open. And so you can see my nice, pretty top stitch. There's the seam, and it's exactly 1/8 of an inch apart from each other. So it's actually, if you want to say each stitch is 1/4 inch apart. So now that we have our bottom done, and just so you can see the bottom side, there's your nice open seam, and it lays nice and flat. So what we're going to do, and just because I want to be able to get both sides ready together at the same time, I will actually pin and clip. And I say pin and clip because at the bottom I will use a clip. And the biggest way I say to do this, make sure where your seam, where you have your vinyl is even on both sides. Then I clip it there, and I clip it down at the bottom. And since this is woven, I can use pins. And I will pin the rest of the way up. And I'm going to do this for go ahead and do this for both sides. So just so you can see, I have it pinned and clipped. Okay, so we are going to match up our seam again, right where the vinyl is. And we're going to clip it and pin it. Now, I have some of you are probably saying, well, what are we doing with those big squares that are open in the bottom? And that's how we're going to do box corners. And I will show you how to do box corners in just a minute. That's where having those nice, pretty flat bottom seams are awesome. Okay. And we are going to sew this together. It doesn't really matter which one you sew from, top to bottom or bottom to top. In that case, it doesn't really matter. So we're just going to sew this real quick. 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, and we're almost done with our exterior. After we sew both sides, we will box our corners, and then the exterior is complete. And next week we will put together the lining and then put together the bag. So next week might be a little bit long. Well, it's actually not next week, should actually be 2 weeks from today because I am headed to my parents for the week. If that changes, it might change. I might be able to take my stuff with me. It just depends. So right now, I'm not going to say definitely. It's either going to be in a week or 2 weeks. We'll see how that goes. So we have our side seam. There's one side seam completely sewn. We're going to flip it over and do the exact same. Also, if I have room in my suitcase, going to my mother's to fit this bag for doing lives next week. If I do, we will try our best to do it next Wednesday. Okay, we are stitching all our way down. And since it is big bag, I do fold it over a lot of times while I'm sewing just so I can kind of hold it in place a lot easier. Okay, so the next part to actually box our seams. So as you can see, we have two corners that are both have boxes cut out of them. What we are going to do, just so you can see, we have our side seam, and now we're going to kind of finger press that open, and we're going to match up our seams to the bottom. And I just usually use 3 little clips to hold in place. And we're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I'm only going to clip one corner at a time. Okay. So we have one done. So at this point, we are actually going to trim down this seam. We are going to take it and trim it down to 1/4 of an inch. This just reduces our bulk. So we have our nice little piece we just clipped off. So we're going to do this to the other side. We're going to clip it and then sew it at the 1/2 inch seam allowance. Match up my seams. Put my clip on, and I'll do my other 2 clips. And we are going to sew this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And all right, there we go. And we're going to trim down to a 1/4 inch. Okay. All right. So I will turn the camera again. And we have our exterior of our beach bum bag made. And just to show you what it looks like, I will turn it completely right side out. And I will show you why you make sure to match your seams. If you look, nice, pretty match seams. So it's nice and straight. That's our 4-inch depth. If you can see, that's your 4-inch depth. All right, so there's our other corner or bottom. All right, so we have the exterior of the beach bum bag. And as you can see, if I can sew it the half of the bag in an hour, this is not a very complicated bag. It just has bigger pieces. So we have the exterior. As you can see, we have my raw edges up here. We will get the rest of it done either next week or in 2 weeks. And I will post about that and let you know which one it is. So we have our really cool looking Mario print bag. So I will see y'all next week or in 2 weeks. I will come on at least if I'm not going to be filming next week for a live to sew. I will be posting a small little clip and say we'll pick it up next in 2 weeks. But more than likely it will be 2 weeks. I just don't know yet. I'll pack stuff and see. I will talk to y'all next live and we'll finish up the bag. Have a good night.